When IBM personal computer owners look for good software, where can they turn? To IBM.
What was driving IBM PC sales was software.
Business programs, entertainment, productivity, education.
But software for an IBM wouldn't run on the Mac. If the Macintosh was to succeed, Jobs needed killer applications. Enter 25-year-old software supremo, Bill Gates. At that time, his company, Microsoft, had 100 workers and was growing like crazy thanks to DOS, the operating system that drove the IBM PC. But DOS sure wasn't a GUI. Gates and his aggressive number two, Steve Ballmer, were immediately intrigued by the Mac.
Jobs talked to Bill at some industry conference and said, hey, we're doing, I think Lisa was sort of in development. He said, but I'm going to do the graphical interface machine here at Apple. Not just that Lisa thing, Bill. I'm going to do the one that's really going to be the winner.
While the Mac was being developed, Jobs staged an event, a parody of a TV game show, to whip up enthusiasm among software developers.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, the Macintosh software dating game.
Jobs got the three top software bosses of the time to sing the Mac's praises. One of them was Bill Gates. Steve didn't realize he was opening the door to the man who'd proved to be Apple's main rival.
When was your first date with Macintosh?
We've been working with the Mac for almost 2 years now, and we put some of our really good people on it, and
even before we finished our work on the IBM PC, Steve Jobs came and talked about what he wanted to do, that he thought he could do sort of a Lisa but cheaper. We said, boy, we'd love to help out. The Lisa had all its own applications, but of course they required a lot of memory, and we thought we could do better. And so Steve signed a deal with us to actually provide bundled applications for the first Mac. And so we were big believers in the Mac and what Steve was doing there.
Most people don't remember, but until the Mac, Microsoft was not in the applications business. It was dominated by Lotus. And Microsoft took a big gamble to write for the Mac.
And so we got started in early 1982 on our Macintosh software effort. And I think at that point in time, it really clicked with Bill that, graphic user interface was going to be the way of the future.
But while Bill was having his own GUI revelation, Jobs believed that Apple's true enemy was IBM.
You've just seen some pictures of Macintosh. Now I'd like to show you Macintosh in person.
The Macintosh was undoubtedly the first affordable personal computer with a genuine graphical user interface. It was also the first computer to be a monument to one man's ego. Forget the brilliant work done at Xerox PARC and the innovations borrowed from the Lisa. On the day, only one man was claiming paternity for the Mac.
So it is with considerable pride that I introduce a man who's been like a father to me, Steve Jobs.
I was standing off stage, and as he came off, he said, this is the proudest, happiest moment of my life. And it was all over his face. It clearly was, because he had launched a revolution.
The success of desktop publishing came too late for Apple's founder. In 1985, Mac sales were still flat, but Jobs refused to believe the numbers. He simply behaved as if the Mac was a hot seller from the start.
The grandiose plans of what Macintosh were going to be was just so far out of whack with the truth of what the product was doing. And the truth of what the product was doing was not horrible. It was salvageable. But the gap between the two was just so unthinkable that somebody had to do something, and that somebody was John Sculley.
John Sculley, whom Jobs saw as his own creation, presented the board with his strategy to save the company. The plan did not include Steve Jobs.
The board had to make a choice, and I said, look, it's Steve's company. I was brought in here to help, If you want him to run it, that's fine with me. but we've got to at least decide what we're going to do, and everyone's got to get behind it.
But he took it as a personal attack, started attacking Scully, in which backed himself into a corner because he was sure that the board would support him and not Scully.
And ultimately, after the board talked with Steve and talked with me, the decision was that we would go forward with my plans, and Steve left.
What can I say? I hired the wrong guy.
That was Scully?
Yeah. And he destroyed everything I'd spent 10 years working for. Starting with me, but that wasn't the saddest part. I would have gladly left Apple if Apple would have turned out like I'd wanted it to.
People in the company had very mixed feelings about it. Everyone had been terrorized by Steve Jobs at some point or another, and so there was a certain relief that the terrorist would be gone. And on the other hand, I think there was incredible respect for Steve Jobs by the very same people. And we were all very worried what would happen to this company without the visionary, without the founder, without the charisma.
Apple never recovered from losing Steve. Steve was the heart and soul and driving force. Would be quite a different place today. They lost their soul.
Windows may at first have been a joke compared to the Mac, but Gates is persistent. Slowly it got better, and the guys at Apple got worried. As each new feature appeared on the Windows GUI, the more they thought Microsoft was copying the features on the Mac. So finally, they sued Microsoft, accusing them in a long legal battle of stealing the look and feel of Apple's GUI.
The look and feel, which is how it looks, the experience of using it, was not patentable, but it was copyrightable. But there was no precedent law. This was going to be a precedent-setting case.
But it was a period of 5 years where Microsoft, our whole strategy would have been ruined because Windows was very important to us.
They weren't going to change anything. And they were going to get us to cave in or take us all the way to the Supreme Court on this thing.
We assumed that the lawyers, the judges would all come to the right conclusion, which eventually they did.
And Apple lost, but